Welcome to the SBI Podcast, offering CEOs, sales and marketing leaders ideas to make the number.
Welcome SBI Podcast listeners and video podcast viewers. My name is Greg Alexander, and I am the CEO of SBI, a sales and marketing company dedicated to helping you make your number. This is the weekly SBI podcast, and its purpose is to help you make your number by getting your peers to share with you how they make theirs. And today's guest is Rick Haviland, and he is the President of MarketSource, the world's most successful sales and marketing outsourcing company. Founded in 1975, MarketSource has helped over 200 companies generate over $6 billion in revenue. How about that for some numbers? In my view, what makes them unique is they can hire, train, and deploy both inside sales teams as well as field-based sales teams in a matter of weeks, when it takes most of us several months to do the same. Rick has been with the company for 22 years, and as president, is responsible for setting the strategic direction for the company and for extending its market leadership position. So Rick, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Greg. Happy to be here with you all today.
Okay, today we're going to ask Rick to help his peers, other company presidents, set their companies up for success by demonstrating how to select the right markets to compete in. Job one for the president is to define for his company which markets to compete in and which markets to stay away from. So why is this important? Well, if the president doesn't make this decision, it's going to be made individually by each employee, and that will result in conflicting priorities. For example, the sales team will be chasing all business versus the right business. So it's the job of the president to make this call so the entire company is rowing in the same direction, so to speak. We're going to use a section of SBI's revenue growth methodology to guide our conversation, specifically phase 6, which is page 64 and 65 if you're following along at home. If you want to get a copy of this, download our methodology at salesbenchmarkindex.com/2016-report. Okay, Rick, you ready to go?
Ready to go.
All right, fantastic. So I guess my first question, I'll start at kind of a high level. What is your definition of a market? Do you think about it in geographic terms, in industry verticals, in certain segments? How do you define a market?
Yeah, great question. Pretty straightforward, actually. We define our markets primarily by vertical industry, like is it automotive, consumer electronics, finance and insurance, or IT. We then, though, we break it down by channel next. Is it retail, B2B, or both? And the reason we look at our markets that way is really because industry and channel subject matter expertise is what we're built around. So it makes sense for us to look at our markets in that way.
Okay, fantastic. So your offering to your customers is specific to their business and their vertical, so that's the reason why you look at markets that way.
That's exactly right.
Okay. My second question is that when you think about a market, what makes a market attractive to you and why?
Okay. Several things, I guess, make markets attractive for us. The first two really key dimensions are the potential spend and the account scoring within the market. So we look for healthy markets with healthy accounts that are providing products and services that need to be sold, not just bought. And that's really key for us. We're looking for an area where there's a reasonably to high degree of complexity in the sale, because that fits into our sweet spot. We also like markets with medium to low regulation, with accounts that sell through channel partners and have a propensity to buy over the phone. Then we also look at how well our capabilities fit into that market's problems and the accounts within the market. Do they value extraordinary customer interactions to help them sell better and really create a strong brand differentiation? And then some of the other things, we like are markets with strong ecosystems so that we can land a major account within that market, and then we can expand into adjacent markets from that major account.
Fantastic. I mean, that was such a crisp answer. And for those that are listening, especially if you're a sales leader, think about if you work for a president like Rick, who, when asked that question, what makes a market attractive, can just rattle off the 3 or 4 things that does make a market attractive, and what you can do with that as a functional leader, either in marketing or sales or HR or products or what have you. I mean, you know exactly, what makes a market attractive, why, which companies within that market because they're scored, what attributes of companies. For example, he mentioned low regulation. He mentioned a complex sale. So you can tell there's a lot of thought there. So that's an inspirational answer for a lot of us. Rick, your answer reminded me of a friend of mine, Jack Lynch, who is the CEO of Renaissance Learning. And I asked Jack a similar set of questions for an article I wrote for the SBI magazine. And this article is titled Leading the Sales Team as CEO. And it was published in the Q1 edition. And Jack discusses how he prioritized large school districts in the United States for a variety of reasons. They sell education software. So those listening to our conversation are probably going to want to read that article. So let's take a short break and let them know how to get a copy, and we'll be right back. So here's what the magazine looks like if you're online looking for a copy of this. So come back after the break.
Making your number is hard. Your problems are complex. Complex problems need complex solutions. Introducing the SBI magazine. Read in-depth stories written by award-winning journalists about how your peers have overcome their problems to make the numbers. When you need more than a tweet, social post, or blog article, turn to the SBI magazine. Go to salesbenchmarkindex.com to subscribe.
Okay, welcome back. My name is Greg Alexander, and I am the CEO of SBI, and my guest today is Rick Haviland, the President of MarketSource. Today we are discussing how a president of a company can set his or her company up for success by picking the right markets to play in. We are using SBI's revenue growth methodology to do it, specifically Phase 6, pages 64 and 65. And before the break, Rick shared with us his definition of a market. What makes a market attractive to him and why? And during this segment, we're going to hear from Rick what makes a market unattractive, how to keep out of those markets, thoughts on how to size a market, and if market share is still a relevant metric to track or not. So Rick, let me come to my next question. So you told me what makes a market attractive, and you were very crisp in your answer, which tells me you probably have an equally compelling answer as to what makes a market unattractive. So what do you avoid?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, heavy regulation is less than desirable for us for a number of reasons. So we try to avoid that. The other thing is when the person-to-person interaction and experience is not that important to the sale of a market or an account's products or services, whether that sale is face-to-face, over the phone, or via web, that's also not very attractive for us. And when there are markets and accounts focused on selling low-margin products or services, again, it's not in our sweet spot. So if a product or service essentially sells itself or the margins are extremely low, typically that market doesn't need or can't afford a world-class person-to-person sales experience, which is what we're always trying to provide. So that's typically what we avoid, Greg.
Okay, very good. And the sales organization, because I got a number to make, oftentimes will call on anybody that might be willing to spend, and some of those companies would have those attributes, those unattractive attributes you just mentioned. So how do you build the discipline internally to keep your resources focused only on the markets that you've selected?
Very carefully. Great question. So once we segment and then select the market, we try to drill down our selection to specific accounts. And then we organize these accounts by their account score, which we talked a little bit about earlier. And then we take all the good accounts and break them down into 3 tiers. So we got the very best being first tier. We also identify accounts that qualify as good in our scoring methodology, but that reside in secondary markets. And that really ties back to the strong ecosystem that I mentioned earlier. We then build out our marketing and sales strategy to go after these very specific accounts. This is going to include things like mapping sales territories, building out the buyer personas, identifying key activities, and establishing success metrics. and then how we drive visibility and accountability through process and technology. Put all that together, and that's how we really keep our sales force focused on the right markets and the main thing.
I mean, it's such a great answer for a variety of reasons. I mean, the job of the president is to set the strategy. And my simple definition of strategy is the allocation of three things: people, money, and time. And you can't allocate those things correctly unless you have that tight of a definition that you just gave me. And strategic alignment, which is a big theme in this year's report, starts with market selection. So then the product team or the services team can come out with things that meet the specific needs of that market. The marketing team can generate demand only from those markets. The sales team can call on territories and accounts only in those markets, and it just goes down the list. So it's a great example of having a very tight answer at the top of the organization. It's not surprising to me that people hire you to be their sales force at times because of the way you think through things. Let me come to sizing. So whenever you do market analysis, you try to come up with a total available market, and its growth rate, its organic growth rate, is one factor into whether or not you should go after market A, B, or C. So have you attempted to size your markets and attempted to figure out their growth rate?
We have, and we take a pretty straightforward, simple approach to it. We're an evolving market space, so we don't try and overdo it with the science, but what we look at is the potential spend of accounts within a market, and then we look at the revenue and income health of those accounts within the market.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And in your space, I mean, the vertical industries that you mentioned earlier in the show are really, really large. I mean, so there's billions and billions of dollars of potential spend there. So whenever I see that, and you and I have worked together, so I have some insight into that, I question whether or not market share is still a relevant metric to track because, I mean, the market's so big, 1% market share could be a huge number. And therefore, why is it even worth tracking? So do you pay attention to market share?
I think what you just mentioned was great. We do, but not in the traditional sense, specifically because of what you just said. So, as you know, we're a specialty player in a $50+ billion BPO CRM market, and that market's growing at 5% CAGR. So, a tremendous amount of opportunity for us there. So we don't spend a tremendous amount of time trying to be surgical about measuring our market share. But of course, we want to grow and we want to continue to take share. So what we do want to know is what our share of the total addressable market is within each market. And this really helps us determine how much do we want to invest in that market opportunity, because ideally we want to make sure we're positioned to see double-digit growth every single year.
Yeah. Okay. Very interesting. Recently I had John Gleason, who is the Chief Sales Officer of Ryder, on an episode of SBI TV. And he discusses how he transformed 3 Fortune 500 sales teams. It's a pretty remarkable episode. It's relevant to this conversation because the market that John competes in is very mature. I mean, the management of truck fleets, and even a 1% share gain can move the share price a lot. So this audience today who's listening to you and I discuss market selection, they might find this particular TV episode useful. So let's take a short break and direct everyone to subscribe to SBI TV. Come right back after the break. You are watching SBI TV. This is a monthly web TV show featuring guests just like you, executives trying to grow their revenues. Each month, you can peek behind the scenes and watch your peers discuss their strategies for how they make their numbers. You are not going to want to miss this. Welcome back, everybody. My name is Greg Alexander, and I am the CEO of SBI, and my guest today is Rick Haviland, the President of MarketSource. Today we are discussing how a president of a company can set his or her company up for success by picking the right markets to play in. We're using SBI's revenue growth methodology to do it, specifically phases 6 Phase 6, pages 64 and 65, which you can find in our report, How to Make Your Number in 2016. And right before the break, Rick and I were discussing market share and organic growth rates. So during this segment, our last one, we're going to hear from Rick how to identify critical success factors for each market and his thoughts on competitive positioning. Rick, critical success factors are the things customers demand from you to be great at in order for them to give you their business. And they vary from market to market. For example, I travel a ton. And when I show up at my hotel room at midnight, I don't want to stand in line to check in. I want mobile check-in. And it just makes my life easier. So that's a critical success factor, and I make my hotel selection based on that. My wife, in contrast, when she signs up for a credit card, all she cares about is getting bonus miles on grocery store purchases. You can see how things are very, very different. Critical success factors are different by market. So how have you determined what your buyers want in the markets you serve?
Well, first and foremost, we ask them. We spend a lot of time talking directly with our clients about that very thing. In addition to the ad hoc conversations, though, every year we conduct a Voice of the Customer survey. And this really is to ensure that we understand their requirements and kind of their minimum price of entry, as well as their desired positive business outcomes. And then we also want to make sure that the MarketSource value drivers and our differentiators are in line with our buyers' critical success factors that you mentioned. In addition to that, though, we then consider the main reasons why people outsource in general. So it's things like lower cost, focus on their core business, improved efficiency and quality. You can imagine what they are. And we have to be able to deliver on all of those things, but we also believe the number one reason to outsource your sales should be to increase your sales, improve your customer experience, and really just get better sales. So we talk to our customers, we do formal surveys, and we look at, in general, the space that we play in, what's demanded to be successful.
Great answer. I mean, it seems so simple. Do a Voice of the Customer survey once a year, and yet sometimes people get busy and they forget to just ask their customers, what do you want? So it's great to hear that you guys do that. Let me go to my next question, which is regarding reach. It's one thing to say, I want to be in this market, and another thing altogether to be able to reach these prospects. So when you have entered a market, how have you been able to get access to the decision makers in these targeted accounts?
Yeah, we use many different avenues, really, that range from direct marketing campaigns, automated demand generation, to cold calling, feet on the street, networking events, so on and so forth. The business we're in, there's opportunities for each one of those things to help. But some of the most effective ways that we've seen have really been through personal networks, because we tend to deal with people at the C-suite level, client networks and referrals. And we've also got into really seeing the importance of identifying a strategic anchor account that allows you to build strong proof points, which we then use to open doors throughout that industry.
I love the anchor account example, because you're right. When you're selling complex B2B solutions, referenceability is key. And
huge.
Yeah, and if you have one anchor account in an industry that everybody respects that you did a good job for, then expanding to 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 after that is much easier. So that's a great answer. All right, we're going to take one more break. When we come back, Rick and I will discuss what to do next if you're picking and choosing markets. If you liked listening to Rick and want access to more peer-driven best practices, I think you should check out our blog. So here's how to subscribe to the SBI blog.
Each day, you receive hundreds of emails, tons of text messages, countless telephone calls, and sit in too many meetings. How do you find ideas to make the number with all this noise? The SBI blog filters all this nonsense for you and presents only first-rate ideas to make the number. Simplify your life. Subscribe to one blog and read the best content. Go to salesbenchmarkindex.com and subscribe today.
Welcome back, everybody. Rick, let's put a nice bow on this. I would like you to speak directly to the audience and share with them 1 to 3 things that you would do immediately following this show to pick and choose markets.
Okay, we've actually talked about it earlier a couple times, and the things that I would do to pick and choose new markets would be, number 1, complete market segmentation. Number 2, complete an account segmentation effort. And I would do that both for your current markets and your potential target markets. In my opinion, this is really going to provide you with the confidence and the visibility that you need to help you determine where to invest your time and your money and, as you've said a couple times, make your number.
Yep. Okay, fantastic. The one thing I wanted to point out to the audience here that we need to put an exclamation point is that it's important to do it at the account level. So segmentation, take it all the way down to the account level. Don't leave it at the market. All right, so let me do my best for you audience members on wrapping this up. So what does all this mean to you, the members of our TV audience? Sales and marketing teams cannot make their numbers if the president does not give them an accurate number. Making the number requires having a number that's obtainable. And a key input into assigning out a revenue target is market selection. If the president or CEO gets this wrong, you're going to miss your number. It's just no way around it. This is why you care. If you want to make sure you get this right, get a copy of this year's research report called How to Make Your Number in 2016, salesbenchmarkindex.com/2016 report. If you feel you might not get a fair revenue target and want one, you can have one of our experts lead you through a workshop which will detail for you how to do this. Same URL, salesbenchmarkindex.com/workshop. And just request one of our folks to come out and see you. Rick, I want to thank you for letting me put you on the spot with our little role play here. Our audience has a greater chance of making the number after listening to you. So thanks a bunch for making a contribution to our field.
Thanks, Craig. Always good to be with you. I appreciate it.
All right. And I also want to thank our audience for tuning in. This show has become very popular. Thank you for that. With this popularity comes great guests like Rick Haviland, President of MarketSource, the most successful sales and marketing outsourcing company in the world. That doesn't happen if you don't tune in and if our audience doesn't grow. When I invite a guest to the show, they say, give me the demographics, and I've got some compelling stats to share with them. So thanks a bunch for tuning in, and I want to wish you much success as you try to make your number.
This has been the SBI Podcast. For more information on SBI services, case studies, the SBI team and how we work, or to subscribe to our other offerings, please visit us at salesbenchmarkindex.com.